Well, hey, everybody. It's time for Mike in the Midwest because it's Tuesday afternoon and we are going to tell some stories. It's hot. It's hot, but it's getting hotter this weekend. Here we go. Mike in the Midwest 106. Sit back and enjoy. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 106 already of Mike in the Midwest, our mini podcast for the amazing patrons just like you of the Be Our Guest podcast. Of course, my name is Mike Rallman, host of the Be Our Guest podcast since March of 2008, if you can believe it. Holy cow, we're already in the year 2022, and we have been going nonstop since March of 2008. I hope you've enjoyed the journey along with us. Many of you have been with us since the beginning. And I'm telling you what, that is a big ask to listen to over 2,100 shows at this point. And we've had a lot of interesting ones. Of course, about a third of those shows have been trip reports with listeners just like you, folks getting back from the Disney destinations, folks coming back mostly from Walt Disney World, but sometimes Disneyland. We've had a lot of Disney Cruise Line reviews. We've even had a couple of Adventures by Disney folks come back and tell us about trips to Europe or South America. We've kind of run the gamut over the past 14 years, and I hope you've enjoyed all the coverage we've brought you. And I will tell you that I've been reflecting on the show here over the past week, and it is a challenge sometimes to bring you new and exciting content after such a long run. But I am trying to do the best I can to always make the shows worth your time. And, we try to switch things up, but we always want to keep the show what it is because I hope you do enjoy what we bring you. So we love having Ricky and Pam on the show, but I hope you've enjoyed having Scott, kind of a new voice here over the past few months to kind of bring some new stories and a new perspective into the fold there because he is a DVC member. And, I really appreciate what Scott brings to the show. And he's really helped us out this past couple of weeks because Ricky has been a little bit under the weather. And the past couple of Mondays, she's been struggling with some things. So she was not be able to record with us. She's fine, nothing serious. So don't stress out too much about that. She'll be with us next Monday. I thought she'd be with us this past Monday, but I'm pretty sure she'll be with us this coming Monday. But of course, Pam, I've kind of hinted at it, but you're a patron here. She's down at the Galactic Star Cruiser as we speak. She's down doing that experience. So she's going to come back to the show and do a full review on the podcast of what that was about. Of course, you probably heard about it by now on other shows, but she had the opportunity to do the 2-night cruise down on the Halcyon. So we'll hear all about her experience. I don't know if you know this about Pam, but she is actually a big Star Wars nerd. She doesn't talk about it much, but if you're going on the podcast cruise with us, if you've ever sailed with her, ask her about Star Wars. She is a Star Wars nerd. She just doesn't she doesn't walk around with her hair in Princess Leia buns, but she definitely knows her Star Wars. So she's going to have a cool perspective on this when she gets back. I just wish I could have gone with her, but I've got a lot going on. I just got back from Disneyland and so forth. So we're going to have some fun coverage of that on the show. And of course, we'll be back to Pam and Ricky on the podcast. But of course, this week we'll have Scott and me doing the listener questions. And of course, Friday, we kind of flap our gums about Disney topics. We pick a topic, but then we of course we interject our stories. When Scott and I do a show, I think you've kind of noticed this by now, probably over the past 6 months. Scott and I are really good friends. And so a lot of times we pick a topic, but the topic kind of becomes secondary sometimes. And I kind of enjoy that as a podcaster. And when I listen to other shows, I really enjoy that as well. A lot of times the topic is important to me when I listen to another podcast, but it's also kind of the side stories that I really enjoy just as much as the main topic. And I hope that's the case for you. And if it's ever not, I do not ever mind constructive criticism. So please do email me. My email is always open, mike@beourguestpodcast.com. It could not be easier. I always want the show to be the best it can be. And I was a teacher for 17 years. So I know that the best way to learn, the best way to make yourself better is to hear critiques and to modify things as you go, because, I'm still learning about podcasting. So if we're doing something that is not ideal, let me know, because I do try to tweak things. I try to keep things the same as much as I can. I try to find that perfect mix. because it is hard, to find topics after 2,100 shows. Scott and I were talking, what are we going to do for the Friday show this week? He's like, well, I don't want to repeat anything. I'm like, it's hard not to repeat things when you're talking about Walt Disney World after 2,100 episodes. But let's try to find a new perspective. So we compared Walt Disney World and Disneyland attractions, but not the obvious ones like pirates. Everybody talks about that. So we talked about what about the Matterhorn versus Expedition Everest and stuff like that. So I hope you enjoy Friday's show if you didn't catch it when we recorded live on Monday. But if you have any feedback for the show, hey, please do bring it to my attention. This show is always for you, and I appreciate the time you put into the show, and especially being a patron of the show. This is your show. You have ownership in this show. You are a part of our production team. You are part of the executive branch of our podcast. So always give me feedback. If you have a topic you want discussed, bring it to me, and it will happen. So anyway, I hope you're having a great week, and I hope you're surviving the heat wave. So let me tell you about what's been going on here in in St. Louis over the past week. That's kind of how we always start the show. I did kind of throw the last week's Patreon show out as our Monday show this past week because my guest that was going to come on, and this rarely happens, which is a miracle. I rarely ever have a last minute cancellation for the trip reports on Mondays, but I did have that this week. And this week, as you know, was crazy. And I reached out to a second guest, and she was actually with her family out in DC, so she couldn't make it. After that, I just didn't have any more time to sit down with anybody. So I was like, oh my gosh, what can I do? So I put the Patreon show out for everybody to listen to so they can kind of get a little taste of what happens. And I explained that we usually have 3 parts of the show. I talk about what's going on in my life for the week, and then I do your feedback, and then I give kind of a topic. So that's kind of how we always do things. I just realized that we got like a 3-segment show. But anyway, this week, I mean, it's been hot here in St. Louis. It's been hot everywhere. So I have friends over in the UK. I've been corresponding with a good friend named Simon, who's getting ready. Now, I'll tell you what about my Brit friends, my friends that are over in the UK. I've never been to the UK. My dad's gone there a couple of times with the Rams because they've played exhibition football games over in Wembley. And my dad, he's a, you think Mike in the middle, you think I'm Mike in the Midwest and like I'm his, very Midwestern and I'm not international man of mystery or anything. My dad is his, like blue collar Missouri guy as you can find. Like he is not worldly. He is just, he's a Baptist deacon from Missouri. I mean, just that he is as normal as like, for this part of the country, he doesn't have a lot of he's not an international man of mystery like Austin Powers or anything, but he has gotten to travel to some of these places because he works for the Rams. So he went to the UK and, he told me, yeah, the McDonald's tastes just about the same right there, but it's a little bit more expensive. But he told me that he really enjoyed the UK. So I would love to get over there sometime and see my friend Simon, my friend Malcolm. I have some other friends that I correspond with because of the podcast, and I've met these folks down at Walt Disney World. It's amazing. This show is amazing. It has brought so much to my life because I promise you, I would have never met people from the UK or from Australia or from Japan or from all these places around the country without this show. I would have met people like within 20 miles of my house, maybe without the podcast. Podcasting is awesome. Let me just side tangent. This show is always about side tangents. If you have teenagers, let me go into my teacher mode here for 1 second while I'm thinking about this. If you have kids, like I have a 14-year-old, she's not really excited about content creation. She likes to mess around on TikTok and do dances. She's a cheerleader. That's what they all do. Like when she has a friend spend the night, I don't know if you have teen kids, but if they make TikToks, there's this sound. It goes tick, 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 took, and then then they do they record their thing. So I hear that constantly. And it's always like, hey, we're going out in the front porch, we're making a TikTok, and they do a dance. So that's her extent of content creation. But here's the thing. If you have kids, or if you're a big kid like me, I'm 48, but a lot of times I'm a big kid. Podcasting is so amazing. You can sit in your basement. I'm in my basement, but in a studio in the dead center of the United States right now in St. Peters, Missouri. I mean, near where the Missouri and the Mississippi rivers meet. I mean, I couldn't be more like deadlocked in the middle of our country. And I can speak to anybody anywhere on the planet. How awesome is that? When I was a kid, I used to tune in. My grandpa, I've talked about this on the show. My grandpa gave me an AM radio that I used to listen to the radio station KMOX. And it was a 50,000 watt AM station that carried the Cardinals. So I'd listen to them. But the thing is, KMOX covered all the way down to Cuba once it got dark, it was a superstation. It went all the way down in the South, and people would listen all the time. In the nights they didn't have Cardinal games, they had a call-in show with Jim White, and people would call in from all over the country and talk to this guy on this talk show. And I just thought that was the most amazing thing, that people could listen to the radio and call into St. Louis from Alabama or from the panhandle of Florida or from Georgia. I mean, again, I'm old, so this was a big deal. It's not a big deal anymore with digital communications and Skype and stuff like that, but it was back then. But what I'm saying is, if you have a kid that is interested in things like say they want to become a radio broadcaster, or they would like to do sports, push them towards creating a podcast. It is very, very inexpensive. You can host a podcast to start out for free with places like Podbean or Libsyn, and just get them creating content and put it out there. They're not going to get tens and thousands of listeners the first week, but they might get two or three. And one of those people might be in Ireland. One of those people might discover it in Australia. And how cool would that be for a kid to get their voice heard from somebody else a little bit distant from them? So I'm just saying, encourage your kids, because they could just do it on any kind of, it doesn't have to be a MacBook. The computer that I make this podcast on, I do have a MacBook Air that I do all my work on, but the podcast one I use is a cheap Dell with big old monitors, because I'm blind, because I'm getting old. And that's why I have to change the glasses over the past couple of years, because I'm always on the computers now. It has gigantic monitors, but it's a cheap Dell. The only thing I use it for is the podcast at this point, and it gets the job done. So just encourage your kids, get their voice out there and start a podcast, because this would be a great. Speaking of St. Louis, this weekend. Okay, so I'll tell you what I did last weekend. Last weekend, we went to the Cardinals game. It was my Father's Day gift for my girls. They got me tickets to the Cardinals game for Father's Day. Of course, it wasn't that day. The tickets were for this past Saturday on the 16th of July. And the reason they picked that day is because it was Mystery Player Jersey Day. And there were 3 jerseys you could get, but it was like a mystery bag when you went through the gates. You could either get one of 3 people. You could get Ted Simmons, who's a Cardinal Hall of Famer and a baseball Hall of Famer, catcher from the 70s and 80s. You could get Whitey Herzog, who is just this famous manager from the 80s. Loved him. He was the manager of like my childhood. Or you could get Uncle Charlie, which is Adam Wainwright, which is my favorite all-time Cardinal. Number 50, my favorite player of all time for the Cardinals. So they got me this, and they got 4 tickets. The girls got 4 tickets. So one for me, one for Mallory, one for Paige, one for Pam. And so we figured, well, we got 4 tickets. There's 3 jerseys. There's a good chance Mike's going to get his favorite jersey, Adam Wainwright, right? And the thing was, it wasn't their real name on the back. It was their nickname. So Wainwright's nickname is Uncle Charlie. So it said Uncle Charlie on the back. Whitey Herzog's is the White Rat. So it said the White Rat on the back. And Ted Simmons' nickname was Simba. So it said Simba on the back of his. So we get excited. Go down to the ballpark. We have bleacher tickets. We're going to be sitting in the left field bleachers. And so we go into the gates. Now, I intentionally go into the main gate, right? Okay, so there's a main gate at our stadium, Busch Stadium, where the Cardinals play. And the main gate is where there's a statue of Stan Musial, the greatest Cardinal of all time, number 6. So I'm like, we're going in the main gate because the main gate is probably going to have the best mystery jerseys. And in my opinion, the best mystery jersey is going to be Wainwright, right? They're in these black bags. Like, you cannot see the jersey. They're totally opaque. So when you go through, they scan your ticket on your phone, you go through the metal detector, and then they, pull out of a box and they give you this jersey totally wrapped in like black trash bags. And so you can't see what it is. So we all 4, Mallory, Paige wasn't in town, so Mallory brought a friend. So we all 4 get our jerseys. We stand right there and we rip them open. I open mine, Simba. I'm like, oh, dang, didn't get it. Mallory opens hers, Simba. I'm like, dude, you gotta be kidding me. Pam, Simba. Ava, Mallory's friend, which I knew, we told her on the way down, if you get Adam Wainwright, I get to keep it. I'll trade you mine. Simba. We ended up with 4 Ted Simmons jerseys out of 4 of us. So, I mean, it was a great game. It was against the Reds. They're terrible. We won 11-3. But the thing was, we didn't get an Adam Wainwright jersey, which was okay. We got some pretty cool jerseys, and I mean, the whole thing I'm thinking, like, it's got the Disney connection, right? I mean, I'm the Disney guy and it's Simba. So people are like, oh, you got the Disney, but I wanted Adam Wainwright. But the thing is, it was the hottest game ever recorded at Busch Stadium that day. It got to 103 degrees on that last Saturday in St. Louis. It was so miserably hot. Now, we had bleacher tickets, which At Busch Stadium, there is zero coverage in the bleachers at our stadium. Like, you sit in the total sun the entire game. There is absolutely no way you're going to ever get shade in our bleachers at Busch. So we never ever went to the bleachers. I told Pam, I was like, I appreciate that you got us great bleacher seats. We were 2 rows from the fence. You know, we were the second row beyond the home run fence. And with Pujols playing, I would have loved to have had a chance to catch a home run ball if he hit one. But I told Pam, I'm like, dude, I can barely breathe. So we went up to the Bob Euchre seats. We went up to the very, very top in right field, like, and just sat where it was covered. And we sat in the very, very, very top row of Busch Stadium because at least there was a breeze in the very top row. And we enjoyed the game from the Bob Euchre seats. It was great. You know, we got Cokes, I got a hot dog, and I got a bratwurst and some chips, and got to watch the ball game with my girls. I mean, great Father's Day gifts. That's what I did this past week. With all the stuff that was going on, the air conditioning is chilling right now. We're doing good. Knock on wood. Paige is back in Chicago running the basketball team. The Flames are getting ready for a great season up at the University of Illinois, Chicago. She's living life. She saw her this past weekend. She spent some time at Navy Pier. She spent some time at the Bean. She's getting that whole Chicago life thing going on, which is making me a little nervous. She's got to keep the St. Louis in her. Mallory's got her cheer going on. So everything's going good here, and I hope it's going good for you. So that's what's been going on here in St. Louis. But this next weekend, I looked down at my phone yesterday and I was like, wait, what? This next weekend? Okay, let me tell you about the highs Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in St. Louis. Now, I hope this is wrong. It said the high for Friday, 104. The high for Saturday, 105. The high for Sunday, 106. That is just joking. We cannot have that. That is smoking. I will not even take the dog out if it's that hot. So let's pray that it does not get that hot. But if it does, I will not be going outside. So I hope it's not that hot where you are in the world. And seriously, for all of our friends over in the UK this week, I know you're having historic, catastrophic heat. I hope you get some rain. I hope it cools off ASAP. And we are thinking of you because I know we have friends like Malcolm and Simon and all them over there. But I've been thinking about them and checking in on the weather just pretty much constantly. So, guys, take care. Okay, let's hit the feedback from last week. Last week, I just kind of covered a few last Disneyland stories. We're done with Disneyland. I promise you, I've Disneyland you to death. But I did love the place. I fell in love with the place. I really did. Jody, who's down at Walt Disney World right now and ran into Pam, Steve, and Hannah the other day at Disney Springs before she boarded the Halcyon, and she was super excited. She emailed me, and I love that. Jody says, really enjoyed the Disneyland Extra podcast. Curious what Pam and Mallory thought about the trip out west, the flights, time change, weather, and of course, the parks. I really loved following along with you and hashtag Scotty G on your adventure. I think what really made me stop in my tracks is when you said you wished you would have done this earlier. I think that's really all travel. The memories, the adventures, the opportunities to see new things. I love going to Walt Disney World because there's always something new and new memories to be made. But I can't tell you how often I look at those ABDs and think how amazing that would be if only our air conditioner didn't break after a mere 4 years. Yes, it was a tragedy and rather painful, depressing investment, but glad to hear yours was able to be fixed. All your stories made me want to book California soon, but instead joining the podcast cruise on the Wish in July. Woot woot. Thanks as always for the fun Patreon content and for helping me plan our Walt Disney World family trip in a mere 6 days. Again, she's down there now. And again, for Marathon Weekend and Princess Race daughter's 16th birthday. Thanks, Jody. Yeah, here's the thing. Scott and I kept talking about this during our trip. We're like, we would do this again next 4th of July. But then we said, the only thing better than this is that next 4th of July, we're going to be on the Wish with a bunch of listeners, and we are going to have an amazing time. So the only thing better than going back to Disneyland for the 4th of July next year is that we're going to be on the greatest ship at sea with listeners doing a podcast and having so much fun. So again, next 4th of July is going to be even better than this 4th of July. And this 4th of July might have been the best one I've ever had. So strap in. We're going to have fun. All right. Thanks for the feedback, Jody. Hope you're having a killer time. She just sent me a picture. She was having a no way Jose this morning when I was, when I got up to start working, and all of a sudden I wanted a no way Jose for breakfast. It was really not fair. All right. Trisha up in Wisconsin. Speaking of Bob Euchre, one of her buds, I guess. I love Bob Euchre. He's just he's a American treasure. Welcome home. We've been so lucky to come home from vacation to a relatively quiet home life. However, My husband has to travel for work periodically and visits family in Costa Rica at least twice a year. When he's gone, the craziness commences from leaking leaking pipes, broken air conditioner, and extended loss of electricity, which is problematic when you have a well that uses electricity to flush a toilet. Every time he leaves, I get anxious and brace myself for a disaster. To combat this, I've started taking Disney trips with our daughter when he's gone. That's what I was going to say. When he leaves, you got to leave, Trish. That's exactly it. Like, so at least if something breaks, you guys get home at the same time and then you fix it together. That's what marriage is all about. You share the suffering. I like it. I mean, I don't like that you have to endure a electricity outage where your toilet won't flush. That's brutal. That's terrible. But I love you guys. I love these stories because next time our electricity goes out, I'm going to say, you know what? At least our toilet still flushes because ours isn't electric. We don't have an electric flushing toilet. I think ours flushes. I'm pretty sure it does when the electric's out. You just got to take a flashlight. Anyway, that's our feedback from today's show. And I appreciate your feedback so very much. I want more feedback for next Tuesday. So if you have feedback on today's show or any other show, drop it over at patreon.com/beourguestpodcast. I'm watching right now to see the feedback. All right. Today, I have 3 tweets that I favorited in the last hour, and I'm going to give 3 quick stories. One story per tweet that I just saw put out that I favorited on my timeline. This is I was walking on the treadmill this afternoon because it was too hot outside. And the first one is a tweet from Southwest Airlines, and it reads, "Are you a traveler who has their itinerary planned weeks before you fly, or do you wing it? Either way, we have some great planning tools through our updated flight tracker with destination reels on board." So basically, what this tweet is, it is promoting something that they have in their app when you're on their planes at Southwest. And they've put together little mini guides for all these cities around the country. So when you get to the city, it gives you some kind of things to do. Like if you were headed to Vegas, it gives you some places to eat, some things to see, stuff like that. They're little reels, like little videos. And so I thought about, well, if somebody was coming to St. Louis and I had to do a quick reel of what to do besides the arch, everybody's like, oh, I'm coming to St. Louis. What should I do? Everybody's like, you gotta go to the Arch, gotta see a Cardinals game, you gotta go to the zoo. Those are the top 3 things to do in St. Louis. I mean, for sure. Because I mean, those are like the iconic things, right? If you're gonna come to St. Louis, you're gonna probably go home with the shirt that has the arch on it. I mean, it's like I'm a sucker for those kind of things. Like when I went to Dallas, I wanted to buy like I was in Dallas a whole like half an hour, ate some Whataburger, and I almost wanted to buy a cowboy hat. Mallory really wanted to buy a cowboy hat. And I'm like, dude, we're not even leaving the airport. This can't even count as being in Texas. So anyway, I was thinking about if you come to St. Louis, what would I tell you to do that's kind of it's definitely a St. Louis thing, but maybe you haven't heard of. You probably if you were from this area, this kind of close area, you probably have. But if you're not from anywhere like say Chicago to Kansas City to maybe up in Iowa, down in Arkansas, maybe you don't know that we're known for this. So if you came to St. Louis, I'd challenge you to try a couple new things. One is I would have you go to a place called the Magic House. Now, this is kind of a kids museum. It's in Kirkwood. It's about 15 minutes from downtown St. Louis, and it's a children's museum. But this would be if you have kids. You wouldn't go there if you're just adults. But it's an amazing place that started super small. When I was a kid, we would go there, and it was just a house. It had all these like science experiments in it. But over the years, now it's still open 40 years later, and they've made it bigger and bigger and bigger. But one of the things that is still there, this is like an iconic thing for somebody that is from St. Louis, is that they have this electrostatic ball that you go into one of the rooms and you put your hand on the electrostatic ball and your hair sticks straight up. And as a kid, every kid in the late 70s, mid 70s, late 70s, early 80s had these buttons. Now, if you're from St. Louis, you're gonna know what I'm talking about. It had a brown kind of frame around it, and it had your picture, and it said, I went to the Magic House, and it had your picture in it with your hair sticking straight up. Now, I don't know if you know this, but when I was a kid, I had bleach blonde hair. My hair was white as a kid. It was white blonde, and it was very thin. And so when I touched that electrostatic ball, and my mom cut my hair, my parents were both hippies. I mean, big time hippies. So my mom cut my hair as like a bowl haircut when I was a kid. So When I went to this place, my hair went, whew. I mean, it stood straight up. And so I have no idea where that button went. I haven't seen that in years, but that's one of the places. If you come to St. Louis, that'd be a fun place to go. Look up the Magic House. If you have kids, they would love it. Also, another place, and there's a room where there's like walls around there, and it's hard to describe, but it's like it's a shadow room. So what happens is like you go up and stand next to the wall, and like some light flashes, it goes, and like the light flashes, and then all of a sudden, like the wall, like your shadow is stuck to the wall. It's kind of neat. Like you can jump up against it, but it's a cool. I can't explain it. I'm terrible. It's a podcast, and I can't explain it. You got to go to the Magic House. It's got a 4-story slide. Um, but the thing is, most of the exhibits there have some kind of a science twist to them. So you are learning at the same time. They have traveling exhibits, but that's something you might not have heard of. So that's where I would say to go that you probably haven't heard of in St. Louis, the Magic House. So look, it's in Kirkwood. Now, something to eat would be toasted ravioli. Now, I bring this up because I was listening to another show, Leo Laporte, the tech guy who I talk about on here often. He came to St. Louis and I got to meet him. I was so excited. I was geeked out. Again, rock star. He's a podcaster. I met him in March of 2020, right before everything happened with COVID and all the lockdowns. He came to St. Louis to do a public appearance at Worldwide Technologies, which is right down the street from where I am. But the night before, he did a meetup at the bar called the Trainwreck Saloon. So I went out to the bar, I met him, I talked about how I do a podcast and I try to, emulate his style and so forth. And it was cool getting my picture with him. And it was a rock star moment for me. But the thing is, he was talking about coming to St. Louis in one of his ads for Worldwide Technologies the other day. And he's like, I'm coming back to Worldwide Technologies. I can't wait because I cannot wait to get some more of that fried ravioli. And I'm like, oh, Leo, you missed it. It's not fried ravioli, which actually it is fried ravioli. But the thing is, in St. Louis, we call it toasted ravioli. And so that is a very St. Louis thing. So if you come to St. Louis, you got to go to an Italian restaurant. Any Italian restaurant will do. The chain that you would go to in St. Louis is called the Pasta House. But you would just get toasted ravioli and you dip it in marinara sauce. And it's rocking. Another thing you would get for dessert if you come to St. Louis would be gooey butter cake. And I mean, I'm telling you, I used to rave about this. Ample Hills had that ooey gooey butter cake ice cream. Oh my God. But I'm just telling you what, you just got to get ooey gooey butter cake sometime and just eat it, especially in the summer. You will thank me. It'll be an amazing experience for you. But if you come to St. Louis, that's what you got to eat. What's the last thing that you got to do? So you went to the Magic House and you so yeah, that'd be about it. So that if you had a little ooey gooey butter cake and you had some toasted raviolis and went to the Magic House, I mean, then do all the other stuff. But another place you might want to visit is the City Museum, but that's downtown. Just look it up. A lot of people like that. It's pretty cool. Okay, so the second tweet. I just don't want to make this show as longer than the regular podcast. Here's the second tweet that I found, and it's from I don't even know how I followed this account. His name's Vinny Manovloff, and he's from freeze64.com, which is a Commodore 64 retro magazine type account. And here's what it says. Another of my favorite toys back in the early 80s was my 75-in-1 electronic set from Tandy, aka Radio Shack. I made and learned so much with this. I even worked out how to create a two-way radio and ended up speaking to someone and blank myself when they replied. And there's a picture of this thing that I wanted as a kid so bad. And if you're of my generation, guys and gals both, you may have wanted this if you were a nerd like me, a geek like me. Is they had these kits at Radio Shack. And so my good friend Mark Yerkes, who listens to the show, sent me a website that has all the Radio Shack catalogs from all the years, which I'm going to do a podcast on here eventually. I just got to kind of put it all together. But one of the things that Radio Shack always sold were these 75-in-1s, 150-in-1s, and all they really were was like a circuit board. But they gave you all these projects you could do by connecting wires from this to this, and you could make like a burglar alarm, or you could make the one he's mentioning was like a two-way radio where you could broadcast your voice out, but then somebody could hear it and send back a message. These kits were, I mean, basically they were for like kids that would like to maybe someday later on become engineers. And I thought these were the greatest gifts. I don't know if they still make these or not, but basically it was like a circuit board that had a speaker built in. You would put a couple of, maybe a 9-volt battery, a couple of AA batteries. It had a voltmeter. It had like a buzzer. It did all kinds of things depending on what you did with it. The board was broken up into maybe 20 different sections. It had lights on it. It was just a really cool way to really explore with electronics and see how things worked. I never did get one of those as a kid. I don't know why, because I thought that would have been a good gift, and I don't think they were terribly expensive. And it's funny because this is what my dad does for a living. He's kind of a radio engineer and he hooks everything up. And if he would have gotten me one of these as a kid, he probably could have avoided all these questions. Like when I go to Give Kids the World and I'm trying to hook up the sound system to get everything working so that we can take calls and we can broadcast to the room and we can record without feedback. I'm always calling him like, dude, I got a feedback loop. If he'd got me one of these, he wouldn't have to worry about those calls. I'd have been able to learn this and figure it out for myself. So my dad missed it. Okay. Last tweet. I saw a tweet. This one, I don't have the tweet, but of course, the Major League Baseball draft is still going on. The last round is going on today. And I just saw that the Cardinals drafted with their first pick a left-handed pitcher out of Oregon State out on the West Coast. And that made me remember the day that I was pitching Legion baseball. And I started pitching Legion baseball in 8th grade. I pitched pretty young. I tried out just with my buddy Steve, which I talked about Steve on the podcast. He was a year older than me, but he was a catcher and I was a pitcher and he wanted to try out. So we went and tried out together. I was really too young to make the team, but I just went with him to get the experience. And I ended up making the team halfway through the season because they had a bunch of pitching injuries and they needed a pitcher and I was left-handed and I was tall. So they let me finish the season. We were playing a game one year out in Ellisville, Missouri, which is about 40 minutes from where I live. And I just remember it was about this time of year. Well, obviously it was. And, summer ball and Legion baseball, you play about 60 or 70 games after high school ended. And I just remember we were getting ready for a game and a kid on the other team got drafted. Like he found out that he was drafted right there as we were warming up. And that was a really, really cool experience to see. And I can't confirm this. I could be totally wrong, but it might have been Ryan Howard from the Phillies because he was from St. Louis and he was from Ellisville area. And I want to say it might have been Ryan Howard because I did play against him at one time, I think. But either way, it was really cool because when you think about it, being drafted in baseball does not assure that you're going to be a superstar. Most people that get drafted in baseball don't make it to the big leagues. It's not like, football or basketball. A lot of these kids will go and play independent baseball, frontier league baseball, stuff like that. But I mean, the thing is, if you get drafted, the dream is still alive. That's what I always told my students when I was a teacher. Like, sometimes things are going to happen and it's not necessarily like you've achieved your dream, but you're one step closer. Like the dream hasn't ended. So you get to keep going and you get to take that next step. And one of the things I always thought about with sports is that and if I was, to have a kid that wanted to go into professional sports at this point, I would tell them just keep playing as long as they'll let you keep playing. So, play in middle school. And then if you can make the high school team, play through high school. And if you're good enough, try to make it to the college team. And if you can play 4 years of college, play in college. And then if you're good enough, try to make it so that they don't make you stop playing after college, play minor league baseball. And then maybe who knows? But when I just remember that day we were warming up and all of a sudden the other team, everybody kind of huddled around and just started high-fiving this kid. And it was an exciting thing, even for us as the opposing team, because we got word of what happened, that he had been drafted. And it was a cool thing. It was a really cool thing to see somebody like right there on the field. Like now they're going to be a professional baseball player. So those are 3 tweets, 3 quick stories that I wanted to throw in for you, just kind of a different type format, but just something to kind of pass the time. Hopefully we've had fun here over the past half hour and hopefully you are doing great. But again, if you have any suggestions for the shows or topics you want to hear, I'm all ears. So let me know. But until we get back together again next week, you guys stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you real soon. All righty, everybody. You have a good one and stay cool. See ya.